Welcome everyone. This is class number 25 of the Ibis Prep July 2024 MBE crash course. And we are going to extend the course an extra 2 weeks because it's actually supposed to end on Sunday. Sunday, we're going to do live questions together. Victoria, aka Vicky, has agreed to be the host, and she's going to go through, live questions, and then we'll guess them or hopefully select them knowledgeably as a team via the poll feature, and we'll go through them. That's a really great exercise. We'll finish the cram guide, and that's what we're going to do on Sunday. And that was supposed to be the end of the course, but because we're taking some time to do the mock exams on Tuesday and then today, we're going to do 2 extra sessions where it'll be general reviews. I'll be spinning the wheel and asking people questions. We'll be going over the questionnaires. We'll be trying to leave no stone unturned. So that will be the Thursdays, 7 o'clock on Thursdays. So just kind of conceptually, just understand there's no classes on Tuesdays anymore, but there will be classes on Thursdays, and then Sunday will be the last Sunday class. So if you look at the calendar, which might as well pull up for our convenience, you'll get to see what I mean. So the MBE complete crash course, I told everyone extra classes on 7/18 and 7/25. And if we look at the original calendar, the class was supposed to end here on the 14th, which would just be on Sunday, but now we're going to have additional classes on the 18th and on the 25th. And then sure enough, the exam is right around the corner. So we'll have final review on Sunday, which will be live questions, like I said. And then on the 18th and the 25th, I'll do, just full reviews, leave no stone unturned, look at the questionnaires, put people on the spot, ask them questions, make sure that we know everything. And hopefully that'll be great. And then, just keep studying. I think it's saying 50 to 100 questions per day, study all subject outlines. You know what time it is, right? It's time to really focus and make sure that you get the job done this time. Hard work today means success tomorrow, right? Let your future self be grateful that you put in the work, and you really should do that, because a lot of things could come at you in the next couple of weeks, and you want to be mindful of your time. When you have time to study, make the most of it. Time is your most valuable resource. The only way to pass this bar exam is to walk through the obstacles in our way, which are learning the law and navigating stressful time period. But my team, we're all here to help. I just want to show everyone, we have all of our tutors who are here to do one-on-one bar prep tutoring, and you could sign up for that. And then of course we have the live interactive course that starts on, you can just select anything. It's the same price. That starts on Monday, don't give up, kid. That's the motto, right? And that'll be super fun. So just know that we're here to help. It's not too late. Anyone can pass this test no matter where you are. Know that my team is here to help. So we assigned the mock exam, and the second mock exam had a lower average than the first mock exam. I shared with the class the averages and the like. Let's just go over it and make your comments in the chat. Just pipe up if you have anything useful to say or important questions to ask, and let's learn together. Okay, this test is longer. The questions are longer, so I might need some water breaks. What's going on here? Is the cyclist likely to prevail? A professional cyclist was diagnosed with a severe knee injury and was advised by her doctor to avoid cycling to prevent further damage. The cyclist adhered to this advice for a month, but felt her fitness deteriorating and decided that the benefits of cycling outweighed the risks. One morning, she set out on her usual route, the dedicated bike path. 10 miles into her ride, the cyclist's knee gave out, causing her to fall and become immobilized on the path. 2 minutes later, another cyclist who was riding at a moderate speed but was distracted by his phone collided with her. The second cyclist had been warned by a mechanic that his bike's brakes were worn and needed replacing, but he had not yet done so. The professional cyclist survived the collision but sustained serious injuries to her back. She sued the second cyclist for those injuries in a jurisdiction that applies traditional contributory negligence rules. So this question requires you to understand what that means. Contributory negligence. Contributory negligence traditionally means that if you're at all negligent, then contributory, you cannot recover. That's compared to comparative fault, right? Contributory means you can't recover if you're at all at fault. Comparative means even if you're 99% at fault, you can recover. And then modified means if you're over 50%, then you're banned from recovery. So here, it seems like, are they likely to prevail? No, because they're contributory negligent. We like that. No, because they were aware of the condition. I don't think that's important. Yes, because the professional cyclist helpless peril at the time of collision. Yes, because the second cyclist was negligent in riding with worn brakes and being distraction. I mean, they were contributory negligent too, but it's asking if the cyclist could prevail, and no under a traditional contributory negligence state. We agree with this? All right, I didn't want to start off with the red light of death, like my Xbox back in the day. In a contributory negligence jurisdiction, the plaintiff's contributory negligence serves as a complete bar to recovery. Here, the professional cyclist was negligent by engaging in cycling despite her doctor's advice. Consequently, despite the second cyclist's negligence in riding with worn brakes and being distracted by his phone, the professional cyclist cannot recover damages for injuries. Did anyone want to be brave and mention the chat if they got that one wrong? You don't have to, but I just want to know if everyone knew about contributory negligence, if that was an easy, hard question or whatever. All right, you're all geniuses, perfect. Like Gabby last night. Not you, Gabby. Gabby who shared with the class, she was like, I walked out there feeling like I'm the smartest genius ever, and I'm perfect and I'm brilliant. That was her attitude, which is a good attitude. Gabby's amazing. So according to the state law, self-proclaimed and in reality, according to state law, state teachers, what's the call to question? In a suit to reinstate his employment, which of the following claims provides the least support for the teacher? All right, so he wants to reinstate his employment. According to state law, state teachers may be dismissed for just cause only. A teacher who is both a resident and employee of the state was summarily dismissed on the sole ground that he had reported to federal authorities that the state was not adhering to federal guidelines regarding the implementation of certain federally funded educational programs on which he worked. The state denied the teacher's request for a hearing to allow him to contest the charge. There's no record of any other state teacher having been dismissed for this reason. In a suit to reinstate his employment, which of the following claims provides the least, and they, we made it bolded for you on test day, be very careful to see least, most, whatever, support for the teacher. The state's dismissal of him unconstitutionally denied him of privilege or immunity of the state's citizen protected by Article 4. That seems to have nothing to do with this. I already like that. The state's dismissal of him unconstitutionally abridged his freedom of speech. Yeah, I mean, he said something, they punished him. That seems like a good argument. The state's dismissal of him violated the supremacy clause of Article 6 because it interfered with the enforcement of federal guidelines. I mean, yeah, he was working for the federal authorities and state. I think that's a good thing. The state's dismissal of him without affording him an opportunity for a hearing was an unconstitutional denial of procedural due process. That's the best argument. If it said what's the best support, I would probably go with D, but it doesn't say that. It says A. So, hey, what do you know? The Privileges and Immunity Clause of Article 4, Section 2, Clause 1 of the Constitution does not apply to these facts. The clause reaches only state action that discriminates against citizens of other states. The teachers assist in the state that employed him because he is a resident of that state. So this isn't about, being discriminated or discriminating against out-of-staters. All right, so this one was written a little bit tricky. I will admit that if people got this wrong, this one was written a little bit tricky, but the MBE is written a little bit tricky. It is a comprehension test. You do have to make some assumptions. So, if you got tricked by this one, you're not alone. So 4 months ago, the city conducted a revision of its zoning ordinances and placed the woman's lot and the surrounding lots abutting the public street from the east in a zone limited to use for residency only. The lots abutting the public street on the north side were zoned for both residential and light business use. Melissa asked the city zoning appeals board to authorize her to run translating services from her house, an activity which would be allowed on the north side of the public street, and in fact, a similar business had been operating there for years already. So operating there means on the north side of the street. Operating there doesn't mean in her house. If you got confused by that, then, I could see how you could interpret it that way, but it does more, I would say logically read as an activity which would be allowed on the north side of the public street, and in fact, a similar business has operating there for years. Typically, when there's a word like a location in Miami or in Jacksonville, it's referring to something that was said right before it. So, you know, on the north side of the public street, operating there, it would be strange for there to refer back to her house, which was 2 places before. I'm just clarifying that for some people. Okay, the board has approved the woman's proposal. The reason that's important is because if she had already been operating in her house, maybe it would be a non-conforming use. But because there's something she hadn't been doing, she was operating to do something different, this would be a variance. So amortization, that means you're slowly going to discontinue use over time to conform. Variance, applying to do something different. That's indeed what we have here. Doctrine of change of circumstances applied. Don't even really think that's going to be a good zoning answer. And then non-conforming use. Non-conforming use means you're being grandfathered in. So you were doing something that used to be zoned, it used to be properly zoned for, and now they changed the zoning laws, but because you were allowed to do it before the zoning laws were changed, you're going to be able to continue doing it. That would be an that would be a non-conforming use. And that's not what we have here. This would be a variance. A variance permits a waiver from a zoning requirement. A variance will be granted when owner convinces a zoning appeals board that without the variance, the owner would suffer a hardship regarding the use of the land. In this case, the board approved the woman's application to operate a translating service in her house, and thus the jurisdiction allows use variances that permit non-residential uses in areas that are otherwise zoned residential. Sorry, I usually mute when I clear my throat, but I'm a little off today. What's up with this woman? So we're going to charge her with, I don't know what she going down with. A woman wanted to ensure that her coworker would not attend a critical presentation, believing that her coworker would outperform her. The morning of the presentation, the woman spiked her coworker's coffee with a sleeping pill. She left the coffee on the coworker's desk with a note. However, another employee drank the coffee unaware of the pill. The employee had a severe allergic reaction to the sleeping pill and died. In this jurisdiction, first-degree murder is defined as premeditated and deliberate, and second-degree murder has the same elements as common law murder. On this evidence, what's the most serious charge for which the woman can be convicted? Voluntary manslaughter, second-degree murder, involuntary manslaughter, or first-degree murder? Well, let's eliminate what we can eliminate. It's not first-degree murder. She didn't try to kill anyone. She was just trying to put her to sleep, like not eternal sleep, but just sleep. Biscuit, what's wrong, buddy? Come here. I told you my dog got teeth cleaned today and he's crying. So she wasn't trying to put him to eternal sleep. So it's not gonna be first degree murder. Second degree murder, well, that's common law murder. Was that intent to inflict great bodily harm? Was that depraved heart? Was it malice aforethought? I don't see any of that here because again, they weren't trying to kill anyone. So I'm gonna eliminate D and B. Now, is it voluntary or involuntary manslaughter? I don't think it was adequate provocation. I don't think it was imperfect self-defense. I think the best we can do here, Chief, is involuntary manslaughter. We agree? All right, cool. Thank you, Sapling, for that nod of approval. Involuntary manslaughter is an unintentional homicide committed with criminal negligence or during an unlawful act. The woman intended to cause her coworker to miss the presentation, not to kill anyone. When defendant's actions unintentionally cause harm to someone else, they can be liable for involuntary manslaughter under the doctrine of transferred intent. Cool. Someone said something in the chat. Can't see the chat right now. Okay, here we go. What was on the note? What note? I don't know. Wow, this is a nice short question. So how should the $150,000 surplus arising from the sale of the ice cream shop be distributed? Okay. Let's see. Mario owned a restaurant subject to a mortgage securing a debt he owned to a bank. He later acquired a nearby ice cream shop, financing a part of the purchase price with a loan from a financing company secured by a mortgage on the ice cream shop. So the ice cream shop had the mortgage first, and then the financing company took out a mortgage secured by a mortgage on the ice cream shop. 4 years later, he failed to pay the loan that he owed the bank, which caused the entire value of the loan to become immediately due and payable. The bank decided not to foreclose the mortgage on the restaurant at that time, but instead properly sued for the entire amount of the loan Mario failed to pay. The bank obtained and properly filed a judgment for the amount. A statute of jurisdiction provides any judgment properly filed shall, for 10 years from filing, be a lien on real property, then owed or subsequently acquired by any person against whom the judgment is rendered. So a judgment is operates, a judgment will operate as a lien. Was there a judgment here? Doesn't seem like it. So there's no other applicable statute except that the statute providing for judicial foreclosure mortgages, which places no restrictions on deficiency judgments. Later, the bank brought appropriate action for judicial foreclosure of its mortgage on the restaurant and of its judgment lien on the ice cream shop. The financing company was joined as a party defendant and appropriately sued for foreclosure of its mortgage on the ice cream shop, which was also in default. All procedures were properly followed, and the confirmed foreclosure sales resulted in the following. The net proceeds of the sale to the restaurant to a third party were $135,000 less than the bank's mortgage balance. The net proceeds of the sale of the parking ice cream shop to the fourth party were $150,000 more than the financing company's mortgage balance. How should the $150,000 surplus arise from the sale of the ice cream shop be distributed? So I think this word's actually extra right here, but how could the surplus be distributed? So well, we have $150,000 surplus. The bank is down $135,000. The financing company already got paid. So it would make sense that it should go to the bank, right? Because the bank's the one that has the deficiency. It should be paid to Mario, it should be paid to the financing company, it should be split equally. It's not gonna be split equally. It doesn't seem like it's gonna go to Mario because Mario failed to pay. The bank is still owed money. I think yeah, I think it should go to the bank. Right, because the bank has the deficiency, they're owed money, and the financing company's already been paid. Okay, great. The foreclosure sale of the bank's mortgage on the restaurant was insufficient to pay the businessman's debt to the bank. The bank had received a judgment against the businessman for the entire amount of the defaulted loan. The judgment was properly filed, and the judgment lien applied to all property owner owned by the businessman during the 10-year time period, including the ice cream shop. Oh yeah, it was a judicial foreclosure. I was like, where was the judgment? But there was a judicial foreclosure. So after the financing company was paid in full from the funds, the additional funds generated the sale we paid to the bank, not as a deficiency judgment, but because of the unsatisfied amount of the prior money judgment. Like they literally owed them money that was left over. So tough question just because it was super long, but we'll keep it moving. Is it likely that the man will be convicted of voluntary manslaughter as opposed to murder? I don't know. Let's find out. A man discovers his wife in bed with the pool boy / tutor / bug exterminator. Enraged, he left the house and spent the night at his friend's place to cool off. Okay. Sounds like a good thing to do. The next morning, he returned to find his wife and the same man in bed again, right? Lightning strikes twice in the same bed. So, overcome with rage, he grabbed the heavy lamp and struck his wife, killing her. Okay, voluntary manslaughter. Is it likely he'll be convicted of voluntary manslaughter as opposed to murder? Yeah, because the first time was a separate incident. The second time, it was adequately provoked, right? Like, he walked in, pool boy was there, and he killed him. So no, because a reasonable person would have cooled down or spending the night away. Well, not yes after the first time, but not the second time, maybe. No, because he had ample time to calm down before returning home. Again, maybe the first time, but not the second time. Yes, because his life was committing an unlawful act. It's actually not unlawful. And yes, because the man acted in the heat of passion. I like D here, right? It was the heat of passion because again, he was overcome with rage, and that's when he, let him have it. The discovery of the spouse's adultery is considered adequate provocation. Although the man initially left to cool down, the second time, this way, come on, like she couldn't get a hotel or something. And the man reignited the rage, making it likely he acted in the heat of passion. The second encounter serves as sufficient provocation, qualifying the act as voluntary manslaughter rather than murder. Whose bed were they in? In their bed. They couldn't get, this man doesn't have his own bed. Well, the man probably has a wife too. You know how it goes. All right. Hotel is the answer there. More people would live. Hotel industry would increase. All right, should the testimony be admitted? A defendant was charged with the crime of embezzling funds from the charity where he worked as a treasurer. At trial, the court allowed the defendant to call his neighbor, who testified the defendant's good reputation in the community for trustworthiness. After objection, the defendant then sought to elicit testimony from his neighbor that on several occasions the defendant had, without incident, managed his neighbor's financial affairs. I don't like this. Yes, because it's evidence of a pertinent character trait caused by an accused. No, because good character cannot be proved by specific instances of conduct unless character is an essential element of the charge or defense. I like that. Yes, because it's relevant to whether the defendant was likely to have embezzled funds as a charge in this case. It's definitely not relevant to that. And no, because the testimony is extrinsic evidence on a collateral matter. Extrinsic evidence on a collateral matter. Is it? On several occasions had, without incident, managed neighbor's financial affairs. Extrinsic evidence. It's not really a collateral matter though. It's kind of, similar. It's going to be B. Let's see why D is wrong. It does not relate to a collateral matter. The defendant is allowed to present evidence about a pertinent trait of character, such as trustworthiness of an embezzlement case. The problem is that it relates to specific instances, and we only allow reputation or opinion, not specific instances. B is correct. When a criminal defendant seeks to prove his good character, we only allow reputation or opinion, not specific instances of conduct. For those of you who are taking Florida, we're not even going to allow opinion, only reputation. But federal, this case, we are going to allow reputation or opinion, not specific instances. The owner, let's see what the question is. If the owner decides to return the buyer's check and refuses to sell the sculpture, which argument best supports the owner's decision that the contract was not formed? The owner of boutique regularly displayed local crafts on sale within the shop. A buyer interested in particular handmade sculpture discussed purchasing with the owner. They agreed on a price, but the buyer was hesitant to finalize the purchase immediately. Trusting that the buyer would eventually decide to purchase the sculpture, the owner put in writing a commitment to sell the sculpture at the determined price anytime before the end of the week. On the last day of the week, the buyer mailed a check for the agreed amount, which the owner received the next morning. If the owner decides to return the buyer's check and refuses to sell the sculpture, which argument best supports the owner's decision that a contract was not formed? I bet a lot of y'all got this one wrong. It's a tough question. The buyer's acceptance of the offer's owner was not timely. The firm offer rule does not apply as the owner is not a merchant regarding the sculpture. The firm offer rule does not apply because the buyer is not a merchant. The buyer cannot accept the owner's offer by mailing a check. Okay. So we have to think about something here. The thing we have to think about is, was there a firm offer? Yes. So there's an options contract, right? He put in writing, it does need to be in writing, a commitment to sell at the determined price anytime before the end of the week. The last day of the week, he mailed a check and he received it the next morning. So the last day of the week, he mailed it. So mailbox rule should apply, right? No, mailbox rule doesn't apply to options contract, to firm offer rule. Yes, Saf one said it again, never getting it wrong again. He must have embarrassed himself. That's why this one is actually going to be A. A is the best reason. It wasn't timely because it wasn't received until the next morning, the end of the week, last day of the week. Usually under the mailbox rule, acceptances are effective upon dispatch, but the mailbox rule doesn't apply to options contracts. Firm offer rule is a type of options contract, so A is the best answer here. In this scenario, the owner's offer stipulated that it was valid until the end of the next week. For the acceptance to be effective, it had to be received by the owner within the specified period. The buyer mailed the check on the last day of the week, but it was received the next morning after the expiration of the offer period. Therefore, the acceptance was not timely, and the contract was not formed, as the acceptance must occur within the time frame of the offer's validity. It is important to note that the mailbox rule does not apply to options contracts, including firm offers. So B, the choice is incorrect because under the UCC, a merchant includes anyone who deals in the goods of the kind or otherwise by their occupation, claims to have special knowledge or skill particular to the practices or goods involved in the transaction. For those of you who are taking essays, it's good language right there. You could create it with, paper clips. The owner, by selling local crafts regularly, could be considered a merchant in this context. It's incorrect because the firm offer rule pertains to the status of the offeror, not the offeree. The merchant status of the buyer is irrelevant in determining the applicability of the firm offer rule. Exactly. Oh, Angie, you're here. Haha, I got this question like this before this test, and that's exactly why I got it right on this test. Exactly. Practice, repetition, that's the key to this thing. Just everyone, take these questions, do these questions over and over. Do this Q-Bank 30 times, do your practice questions over and over until you're just getting them via memorization, muscle memory, and then on test day, slow down. Don't just pick them out of muscle memory. So only use muscle memory or your gut if you don't know the answer, but slow down and read every question. Treat it like an island. Treat every question as the most important question of your life, and don't rush at the end. You know, do not rush at the end. The last 50 questions are just as important as the first 50 questions, and I guarantee you, people do way worse on the last 50 because they're fatigued. They want to rush out of there. All of a sudden, their attitude changes. They go from, this is the most important test of my life, to, oh my God, I've been here for 11 hours. I just want to get out of here and have a drink. Like, don't allow yourself to be weak like that. I think that's weak thinking. Be strong until the finish. Okay. Speaking of strength, a woman was hosting a baby shower. So what crime did the strong woman commit? A woman was hosting a baby shower and had been under significant stress due to the financial burden of the event. During the shower, she overheard one of the guests gossiping about her financial situation and calling her irresponsible. In a fit of rage, the woman grabbed a heavy vase and struck the guest, resulting in the guest's death, murder. A state statute defines murder in the first degree as premeditated deliberate, murder in the second degree as common law murder. This is what we got here. Intent to inflict great bodily harm, and voluntary manslaughter in the common law rule. Not voluntary manslaughter. That's not act with provocation. Just saying someone's a brokey. Trust me, if that were the case, then never mind. Okay, first degree murder, second degree murder, voluntary manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter. We're rocking with the second degree. She used a vase, hit her over the head. See you later. Common law murder is unlawful killing of another human being committed with malice aforethought, which includes the intent to kill, intent to cause serious bodily injury, reckless indifference, or intent to commit a felony. The woman's act of striking the guest with a heavy vase demonstrates an intent to cause serious bodily injury, which constitutes malice aforethought. The killing was not premeditated and deliberate, so does not qualify as first-degree murder. Additionally, while the woman was enraged, the provocation of mere words is generally insufficient to reduce the charge to voluntary manslaughter. The act was intentional and not the result of criminal negligence, ruling out involuntary manslaughter. Will the bank succeed in foreclosing on the house? Gabriella got a loan of $300 from a bank and elaborated a promissory note to the bank for that same amount. As a means of securing the loan, the woman's mother gave the bank a mortgage on a house owned exclusively by her. The mother did not sign the promissory note. Gabriella failed to repay the loan, and after acceleration, the bank instituted foreclosure proceedings on the mother's house. The mother filed a timely objection to the foreclosure. Will the bank succeed in foreclosing on the house? Yeah. No, because the bank has an equitable mortgage rather than a legal mortgage. That's not going to be important. An equitable mortgage just means like a mortgage that's not necessarily recorded or, made known to others, but it's made in equity. It's, still valid. No, because a mortgage from the mother is invalid without a mortgage debt owed by him. I don't like it. Yes, because the bank has a valid mortgage, seemingly so. Yes, because the bank is a surety for the mother's mortgage. I don't think so. I think the bank has a valid mortgage. The woman's mother gave the bank a mortgage, like literally. Let's not overthink it. C, a mortgage is security for the performance of an act. The performance may be by the mortgagor or by some other person. The mortgage granted by the mother to secure the debt of Gabriella is valid, even though the woman also has personal liability on the debt. All right, perfect. A nice short question. Is the court likely to grant the marketing firm's motion? Let's see. No, it's just like, what's the answer? Okay. A software company based in state X entered into a service contract with the marketing firm based in state Y. The contract contained a clause that required any disputes arising from the contract to be litigated exclusively in the courts of state Y. Okay, form selection clause. When a dispute arose over performance of services, the software company filed a lawsuit against the marketing firm in federal court in state X, seeking $200,000 in damages. The marketing firm filed a motion to transfer the case to federal court in state Y, citing the form selection clause in the contract and asserting that most of the evidence and witnesses were located in state Y. The software company opposed the motion, arguing that state X law treats form selection clauses as unenforceable and that would be inconvenient for them to litigate in state Y. Is the court likely to grant the firm's motion? What is the firm's motion? To transfer the case. No, because state X law treats form selection clauses unenforceable. No, because a software company filed the lawsuit in a proper venue. Yes, because federal law governs transfers venue. That's true. It would be more convenient for the witnesses and parties to litigate the claims in state Y. I like that. Yes, because the federal court must defer to the form selection clause. We're going to go with C here because it is true that federal law governs transfers of venue and does seem like it would be more important because they say motion to transfer. Most of the witnesses were there, but it's not about the state transfer venue. It's going to be about federal law. So C, federal law governs transfer of venue. Additionally, the Supreme Court's held when there's a mandatory forum selection clause, the action must be transferred to the indicated federal district unless there are compelling reasons to the contrary. It's probably a tough question, but we made it through. So how is the federal court likely to proceed? A construction worker sued his former employer in state courts, alleging unsafe working conditions and seeking damages under both state and federal safety regulations. The construction worker's attorney had a negative history with the judge to whom the case was assigned. To avoid a repeat of past issues, the construction worker's attorney promptly removed the case to federal court on the basis of federal question jurisdiction. The employer's attorney has timely moved to remand. How is the federal court likely to proceed? So who removed here? The construction worker, but the construction worker sued. Did anyone get this question wrong, number 12? Be honest. Did everyone get this one right? Because I literally gave most people this hint, either in the Telegram chat or like before the class. I said only defendants can remove. So how is the federal court likely to proceed? Remand the state claims, but keep the federal claims, remand the entire case, retain the case to avoid the risk of bias and propriety and having it proceed before a judge who has shown a clear hostility toward the construction worker's attorney, retain the case because it was timely removed and the construction worker alleges all federal claims. I think we're going to remand the entire thing. Why? Because the construction worker is removing and the construction worker sued, but only defendants can remove, right? So we are going to remand the whole case. This was a tough question. If I didn't give everyone this hint, I bet you almost everyone would have got this one wrong.
Hey Andrew,
That's me. You, what's up?
can you I think I got remand and remove confused. Can you clarify that a little bit?
Yeah, remove is going up, remand is going down, right? So here they're saying the employer is moving to remand, go back down to state court. And why is that? Because the removal up to federal was improper. Why was the removal up to federal improper? Because the plaintiff removed up and plaintiffs cannot remove. Only defendants can remove. Furthermore, defendants who are sitting in the forum state in diversity cannot remove. Like if you're A sues B in state court in state B, and it's only based on diversity, and B wants to remove up, B is not going to be able to based solely on diversity because B is what we call a forum state defendant. And another thing they like to test that's kind of weird. A sues B, and maybe it's a federal question or whatever, and B wants to remove to federal court in state C. Can't do that, right? You can't remove diagonally. You can only remove up, and you can only remove up if you're a defendant, and a forum state defendant sitting in diversity cannot remove. So removal is not as easy as you think it is, but it's the thing. So the federal removal statute provides that a case may be removed up by the defendant or defendants. Courts have uniformly interpreted that language to mean that the plaintiff cannot remove their own cases to federal court. Excellent. All right, if the court rules for Mark and against the son, will be the most likely explanation. So when Gavin became old and sick, he wrote a deed that granted his apartment to his friend Mark, who was then traveling abroad. Mary and Susan signed as witnesses to make the deed qualifiable for recording under the appropriate statute. Gavin handed the deed to Mark's wife and said, "I want Mark to have my apartment. Please give him the deed." Soon, Mark's wife became aware that Gavin's death would happen any minute, and so she recorded the deed. Mark came home from his travels a few weeks after Gavin's death and claimed ownership of the apartment. Gavin had died without a legal will, leaving his son as the only heir. When his son claimed the apartment, Mark brought an appropriate action against him to fight for its possession. The law of the jurisdiction requires only 2 witnesses for a will to be properly executed. If the court rules for Mark and against the son, then why is that the case? The deed was delivered when Gavin handed it to Mark's wife. The delivery of the deed was accomplished by the recording of the deed. Gavin's death consummated a valid gift causa mortis to the nephew, and Gavin's properly executed deed was effective as a testamentary document. The deed was delivered. Now, when was the deed delivered? It was delivered at this moment when they hand it to you, not when it was recorded. Recording is just putting people on notice of the interest. The delivery is going to occur with the handoff. Like, think of it like football, handoff. Yes, I don't know. But also with the intent for it to permanently leave. If they would have handed it off and said, "Hey, give this back to me," if the Dolphins win the Super Bowl, that wouldn't have been a true delivery. So a gift may be made of real estate. A deed is required, as are the elements of a gift. Gavin had the requisite donative intent as shown by his words. Delivery occurred when Gavin physically handed the deed to Mark's wife as Mark's agent. Acceptance is presumed that the gift is beneficial. At this point, Gavin could not recall the gift. So acceptance is presumed. You don't have to actually record it. Although the recording of a deed may raise the presumption of delivery, here the delivery occurred prior to the recording of the deed. Delivery occurred when Gavin physically handed the deed to Mark's wife as Mark's agent with the intent to pass title. All right, perfect. A very nice short question. There's no applicable statute. If both the foster home and the child claim the residence, to whom should the estate distribute the residence? So before passing away, Linda had elaborated a legally valid will. Her estate was made up of her house and other properties. In her will, she particularly identified her nephew as the heir of her residence. The remainder of her estate was granted to a state foster home. So the heir is the nephew, and the foster home gets the remainder. Okay, she elaborated a legally valid will. Linda's nephew was alive at the time Linda made her will, yet died in a car accident before Linda passed away. It lapsed. Nonetheless, the nephew's wife and their handicapped child survived the accident. Be wary of handicapped children. First off, we're not even supposed to use that word in 2024. Anyway, beware of like being sentimental. Everyone's A, B, and C to me. The value of Linda's house rose considerably due to the increased demand for the housing in the area. There's credible extrinsic evidence that Linda wanted her nephew to own her house after she passed so that he and the wife could raise the child there. I don't think this matters at all. They're just trying to make us feel sympathetic. There's no applicable statute. There's no anti-lapse statute. That's crucial. If there was an anti-lapse statute, then it wouldn't have mattered that Linda's nephew died, because then one of Linda's nephew's descendants or heirs or, you know, issues or whoever under the anti-lapse statute could have taken. But because there's no anti-lapse statute, we're giving to the foster home. If both the foster home and the child claim the residence, to whom should it go to? The foster home because it advised the friend deemed? No. The foster home because it advised the nephew lapsed? Yes, indeed. The child because extrinsic evidence exists that Linda's intent was to benefit the child. It's not how it works, honey. The child because no conditions of survivorship were noted in the will. It doesn't matter. Lapse is a thing. And unless you have an anti-lapse statute, which Florida does have for my Floridians out there, then that's, you know, not the case here. The case here is that there's no applicable statute. This is a lapse situation.
Andrew?
That's me.
Yes. I was just wondering, should we know what anti-lapse statute is for MBE, or?
Yeah, you should know what it means, but they will have to tell you in the fact pattern whether or not the jurisdiction has an anti-lapse statute, and they will have to tell you who can take under an anti-lapse statute. Don't assume it's, you know, your particular state's anti-lapse. Like in Florida, it's anyone who's a descendant of the grandparent can take. They'll tell you this state has an anti-lapse statute where, you know, any of their issues can take. Now, remember, issues are people who come from you, not who come above you. So like that would be a different anti-lapse statute, but they will tell you. If they don't tell you, then you have to assume there is no anti-lapse statute.
Okay.
Good question, though. Super good question.
No problem. I just remember in Florida, I came across practice questions that mentioned like you had to figure out with anti-lapse, but I haven't come across one with
I
this
mean,
section.
you know, you remind me of something, and being reminded of things is good. In this thing, this universe, my classroom, we have the real property thing, and in it is the vocab list. This vocab list is phenomenal. If you forgot about this, like this will be something in my boot camp, and you're gonna have to memorize this. My boot camp's gonna go so hard this year, but you're gonna have to memorize all these terms. But like, I can't stress that enough. This is how you're gonna master real property. Zach, you're supposed to make me a civil procedure one, but we might do it in my boot camp instead. As such, but memorizing these words is so very important. And what was the word you said? Lapse. I wonder if that's in here.
Your anti-lapse statute.
I guess didn't even make my list. All right, well, we met our match. But anyway, most words are in here, but I guess anti-lapse isn't in here, so I'll add that to the ever growing list of vocabulary words that you should know. But yeah, I need to add what a lapse statute is. All right, sweet. So anyway, let's get back to the solicitation. Oh, everyone was mad at me for the solicitation question last time. They wanted the person who sold the pharmaceutical to go down for the solicitation of assault. And I'm like, I'm just not seeing it, ladies and gentlemen, but you guys can see things you like to see. All right. A man won his neighbor's expensive watch, but did not want to steal it himself. So he convinced his friend to break into the neighbor's house and take the watch. This is, yes, solicitation. The friend successfully stole the watch, but was later arrested by police. The applicable jurisdictions adopt the model penal code. Can the man be convicted of solicitation? Yes, indeed. No, because the friend was who committed it. No, because the man did not steal it. Yes, because the friend took the watch. Yes, because the man convinced his friend to steal the watch, thereby, ergo, satisfying the elements of solicitation. Under the model penal code, solicitation is the enticing, encouraging, requesting, or commanding of another person to commit a crime with the intent that the other person commits the crime. The man enticed his friend to steal the watch with intent that the theft be committed. Therefore, he's going down for solicitation. All right, what do we got going on here? All right, this question is not my favorite question, but it's modeled after a question that is the answer to, so we're gonna go with it. Should the court grant the motion to dismiss for lack of PJ? A plaintiff domiciled in state M brought a wrongful death action in federal court in state M against a state N parent corporation and one of its foreign subsidiaries. The plaintiff alleged that a defective medical device manufactured by the subsidiary in South America had caused his wife's death during surgery in South America. The parent corporation does significant business throughout the United States, including in state M. The subsidiary conducts no business and has no employees or bank accounts in state M. The subsidiary manufactures its medical devices for the South American market, but 3% of its devices are distributed in state M by the parent corporation. The subsidiary is moved to dismiss for lack of PJ. They're going to say yes here because it's only 3%. It's only by the parent company. It's not enough to have consistent, general jurisdiction. No, because 3% of the medical devices entered the stream of commerce. No, because of general PJ established for the parent corporation. Yes, because the accident not occurred in the United States. Yes, because the subsidiary lacks continuous, systematic, and substantial contacts. I mean, it's the parent corporation who distributes 3%. 3% is not that enough. It's not substantial. That's what we're rocking with right here. To support general jurisdiction in state M, the subsidiary would have to have continuous, systematic, and substantial contacts with state M, sufficient to consider state M its home. It purposely availed itself of the laws. Merely having 3% of its medical devices distributed in state M does not satisfy the standard. See Goodyear versus Brown. The device sales in state M cannot support specific jurisdiction of the subsidiary because the lawsuit does not relate to those sales. Actually important. All right, will the man succeed in negligent action against the woman? Let's see what this woman did. A woman decided to host a backyard barbecue party. She set up a large heavy-duty grill on her wooden deck, but failed to check the grill's gas valve was securely closed. During the party, one of the guests, a man, noticed a strong smell of gas coming from the grill and saw that it was leaking. Realizing the danger, the man attempted to close the valve to prevent an explosion. All right, this lady's dumb. She failed to check the gas grill. She's going down for negligence. Realizing the danger, the man attempted to close the valve to prevent an explosion. However, in the process, he slipped, fell, broke his arm. The man later discovered that the leak was due to the grill's valve being open. Like, we have duty, causation, breach. Like, you're hosting the party, you're being dumb, someone gets hurt, you're going down. The man sued the woman for negligence, and he's going to win. Yes, because the woman was negligent in not ensuring the gas valve was enclosed. Easy answer. No offense. Yes, because the man was acting to prevent harm. No, because the man voluntarily took the risk of closing the valve. No. No, because it was foreseeable that the man would not foreseeable that the man would injure himself while trying to close the valve. Ramel, let's hear what you have to say about this one.
Yeah, I don't know if this was supposed to be an easy question, but for me, it like tripped me up. So I don't know if you could explain it like a little bit more. So I
Okay.
can get
So you
where I
invite me
got
over
it.
your house. Yo, Andrew, you've been such a great prep tutor. Come to my house. We're gonna have some we're gonna barbecue. All right, cool. I walk over your house. Oh, I get a phone call from my mom, like, hey mom, so oh shit, I slipped, cracked my neck, and what happened? Oh, there was okay, well, here you say that I attempted to close the valve. That's what you think it is, that it was assumption of the risk, but it doesn't say that this is contributory negligence. Okay, so it's not that easy. All right. It doesn't say that this is a contributory negligence jurisdiction. If it was common law, then it would be maybe assumption of risk as a bar to recovery. But we assume that this is pure comparative negligence. That's what you assume on the MBE. They even tell you that. Assume joint and several liability and pure comparative fault. So even if the man was 99% at fault, he'll still succeed in negligence action against the woman. So I hope that answers the question. Like, sure, he might have, done something dumb. He might have assumed the risk, but we're going to assume pure comparative. So even if the man was 99% at fault, it is an easy question because she failed to check it and he was injured. So,
And that was in spite of the fact that it was a completely different valve that caused the injury, right? I think that's what gave me pause on it, because I was just like, wait a second, it's like one valve, but then there's another one.
the grill's gas valve was securely closed. He noticed the smell of gas coming from the grill and saw it was leaking. He attempted to close the valve to prevent explosion. He discovered that the leak was due to the grill's valve being left open. What makes you think it's a different valve?
Oh, maybe it was just it said gas valve first, then grill's valve. So I thought maybe it was like two different valves. That could be it. So
Yeah, but I think it says the grill's gas valve, and then it says he attempted to close the valve, and then it says the grill's valve. So again, yeah, I see what you're saying, but ultimately, I think negligence. A person who attempts to prevent harm or danger is considered a foreseeable plaintiff. If the defendant's negligent creates a hazardous situation that prompts another to act to prevent harm, the defendant can be held liable for any injury sustained by the person acting to prevent harm. Simply put, the woman created this dangerous situation. Here, the woman was negligent in failing to ensure the grill's gas valve was securely closed, creating a dangerous situation. The man's injury occurred as a direct result of attempting to prevent the potential explosion caused by the gas leak, making the woman liable for the man's injuries. And no worries, Ramel, I like you standing up because I didn't mean to say it was an easy question. There's no easy questions. Every question is hard. Except this one. No, I'm just kidding. All right. If the woman sues a theme park for injuries, is she likely to succeed? Let's see what happens. A popular theme park had a water ride that splashed water onto the platform where guests exited. To manage the water accumulation, the park installed drainage grates and periodically mopped the platform, but these measures were only mildly effective. One afternoon, after a particular busy session of the ride, water poured onto the platform. A family exited the ride, and a child, still dripping wet, ran across the platform. A woman following closely behind, slipped onto the wet surface and fractured her wrist. Is she likely to succeed? No, because the theme park installed drainage gates and mopped the platform. No, because a child running across the platform was the direct cause of the woman's fall. Yes, because the theme park did not adequately ensure the safety of its patrons. I like that answer. Yes, because the theme park is strictly liable for any injuries to its visitors. That sounds a little strong. I think this is very similar to the one before. We assume pure comparative fault. Even if the kid or whatever, as long as they were negligent and there was injury, we're going to pick this answer. A land possessor owes a duty of reasonable care to its invitees, which includes inspecting the property, identifying unreasonably dangerous conditions, and taking measures to protect invitees from those conditions. In this case, the theme park had a duty to protect the woman, a business invitee, from the hazardous wet platform. Although the park installed drainage gates and mopped the platform, these measures were insufficient to prevent the accumulation of water and ensure safety. Therefore, the theme park's failure to effectively address the wet conditions likely constitutes a breach of its duty of care, making it liable for the woman's injuries. Okay. Is the garden likely to be held liable? Let's see what's going on. A private botanical garden hosted an open house, allowing visitors to explore the grounds and admire the exotic plants free of charge. One of the guests, a botanist, decided to examine a rare plant in a secluded area of the garden. While reaching down to inspect the plant, the botanist was bitten by a poisonous spider. The garden had posted numerous signs around the area stating, "Caution, dangerous wildlife present, exercise caution while exploring." This is different from the attractive nuisance with the Ferris wheel because these are adults, right? This says a botanist. I mean, you can assume a botanist is an adult unless you're like Doogie Howser or something. The botanist, well, I guess you probably know some young botanists in your high school as well. The botanist brought suit against the botanical garden to recover damage for injury. Is the garden likely to be held liable? Yes, under strict liability because the garden contained dangerous wildlife. Yes, because the garden allowed public to enter the grounds. No, because the garden not willfully or wantonly caused the injury. Or no, because they did adequately warn them. They said, danger wildlife present, exercise extreme caution, exercise caution while exploring. Numerous signs. I think, yeah, adequate warning. You shouldn't be out here reaching for snakes. A licensee is someone who enters the land of another with express or implied permission of the land possessor. The land possessor has a duty to either correct or warn a licensee of concealed dangers that are known to the land possessor. The land possessor must also refrain from willful or wanton misconduct. Here, the botanist is a licensee because the garden permitted visitors to explore the grounds during the open house. The garden's duty was to not willfully or wantonly cause injury and to warn of any known dangers. The garden fulfilled this duty by posting clear warnings about the presence of dangerous wildlife. Therefore, they will not be held liable. C, while it's true that the guardian did not willfully or wantonly cause the injury, the guardian also fulfilled its duty by warning of known dangers. Therefore, this is not the best answer. So if you did pick C, take have grace on yourself. It was one of those, this was just a stronger answer that the duty to warn was met. Okay. So should the witness's note be admitted? I don't know. Let's see. Several defendants, senior executives of a tech startup, were charged with insider trading, the Martha Stewarts. The prosecution called as a witness another executive of the startup who had not been charged, who had not been granted immunity, to authenticate handwritten notes that she had made after strategy meetings where the alleged insider trading was discussed. The witness testified that she had prepared the notes on her own initiative to help her remember what had been discussed at the meetings. After this testimony, the prosecution offered the notes into evidence to establish what had been discussed at the meetings. Should the notes be admitted? Yes, because they're business records. No, because the notes are hearsay without any exception. Yes, because their past recollections recorded. No, because the witness's immunity agreement with the prosecution makes her notes untrustworthy and thus substantially more prejudicial than probative. I don't like D, I don't like C. Are they business records or are they hearsay? Well, did she make them for business records? She prepared them on her own initiative to help her remember what had been discussed, and they want to bring them for the truth of the matter asserted. I think this is hearsay. Does anyone agree with me? This is hearsay with no exception? Yeah, I think so. Because they're not business records. They're from our own initiative. The notes are hearsay because they're out-of-court statements offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted. They do not fit any exception. They do not qualify as business records because they were not prepared in the witness's own initiative to help her remember what happened at the meetings. The business record exception to the hearsay rule requires that be regular practice to make such records and the records be kept in the ordinary course of business. A cyclist from state X and a motorcyclist from state Y were involved in a collision in state Y that injured the cyclist. The cyclist filed a federal diversity action in state Y based on negligence, seeking $100,000 in damages from the motorcyclist. What law of negligence should the court apply? Ooh, Brittany, are you here?
Yes.
This is what we're talking about, Erie Claxon. Let's see. So we have X versus Y and it's diversity. So X versus Y and it's in federal court and state Y. So we're going to use Y, Erie, state law. But if Y has a choice of law, we'll use state Y's choice of law. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I got it right. It was D. I just didn't know how to explain it.
I know, but now you do. The court should apply the federal common law of negligence. No, the court should apply the negligence of state law X, the cyclist state of citizenship. The court should consider the negligence of both state X and state Y and apply the law the court believes most appropriately govern negligence in this action, or as Mrs. Brilliant herself foresaw. D, the court should determine which state's negligent law a state in court Y would apply and apply that law in the state action. See, if they gave you the answer, the court should apply statewide law, that wouldn't be correct. And I mean, if there was no better answer, that's what Erie would say. But Claxon takes it one step further to say apply the Erie state's choice of law, what law they would apply in that action. Under Claxon, the court made clear that in a federal diversity action, the court must look to the choice of law rules of the state in which it sits to determine which of the two competing states' laws should be applied to the action before it. If the man prevails in appropriate action to recover title to the property, what will be the most likely outcome or most likely reason? If the man prevails, a man owned the house where he lived. He received a loan secured by a mortgage on the property from a bank. Later, he failed to repay the loan. The bank then brought an appropriate action to foreclose the mortgage. He was the sole bidder at the judicial sale and was granted ownership of property as a result of the foreclosure sale. A week after, hey, Icky Vicky, are you here? A week after the foreclosure sale, the man inherited a considerable sum. He aimed to buy the house back from the bank, but the bank had decided to build a parking garage on the property and refused to sell it. If the man prevails, what would it be? Victoria, are you here? Victoria. He had used the property as his residence. The court applied the doctrine of exoneration. He timely exercised an equitable right of redemption, or it provides for a statutory right of redemption. I don't know if Victoria's left the building. I think she did. Damn. Vicky. I know she has bad Wi-Fi at her house. Maybe that's why. Well, anyway, this would be statutory. If she comes back, let her know that she could have got this one right. Statutory, because why? because it was after the foreclosure sale. If it was equitable and before, statutory is after. Let me see. She didn't message me. Maybe she's out partying the night away. So a protester will be convicted. A protester entered a public library during a community event. He loudly criticized the library's recent decision to ban certain books and tore pages out of one of the banned books he had brought with him. Library staff quickly intervened and escorted him out before he could cause further disruption. The protester was arrested and charged with violating a state law that prohibited the destruction of books in public buildings. He claimed that his prosecution was unconstitutional under the First Amendment. May the protester be constitutionally convicted? No, because the copy of the book belonged to him and thus tearing it did not infringe upon a legitimate government interest. Yes, because the state law is narrowly drawn to further substantial government interest in prohibiting the non-commutative aspects of the act in question. I like that. Yes, because the tearing of the book was conduct rather than speech. No, because he was saying something. He was on his Sade. No, who was it? Maybe it was Sade, the one who tore it up and whatever on SNL. No, because he was exercising right to freedom of speech by tearing a copy of the book. I think it's B. Right, I mean, it's definitely B. I'm saying I think it's Sade who did the thing I'm thinking of. I can't remember. Oh, not Sade. Sinead O'Connor. Yeah, that's who it was. Totally different people whose names I can't pronounce either of. Hey, Vaso, can you edit that out from the recording? Okay. The protesters tearing of the book qualifies expressive conduct protected by the free speech clause of the First Amendment because the protester intended to communicate a message, so it was actually speech, and the audience was likely to understand it. However, because the state's interest underlying the law that the protester violated, the destruction of books in public buildings, is unrelated to the message communicated by the tearing of the book, a court will not subject it to strict scrutiny. Instead, the court will uphold the application if the law is narrowly tailored to further substantial government interest. That's intermediate scrutiny, a standard justification that the law should satisfy easily, right? As long as it's prohibiting non-communicative aspects in question. This one was tough. But it's based on a similar question that it's like someone burns a flag in a building and they can ban that because there's a safety ordinance that would be time, place, and manner.
I think that what makes it hard is like they're just tearing up a book. They're not like burning something that it's like more obvious.
Yeah, that's what I was going back and forth. I'm like tearing up a book. It was kicking my ass.
Yeah, there was something communicative about it. I mean, that's a good, again, give yourself grace, but hopefully on test day they make it more clear. Okay, so should the photograph be admitted over defense objection? A plaintiff who had been injured in a construction accident sued the construction company for damages. The defendant denied negligence and denied that the plaintiff's injury were severe. At trial, the plaintiff has offered in evidence a color photograph of himself made from a video recording taken by a passerby at the scene of the accident. The plaintiff has demonstrated that the video recording has since been accidentally deleted. The photograph shows the plaintiff moments after the accident with his leg trapped under heavy machinery and a visible wound on his head. Should the photograph be admitted over the defense objection? Yes, because it tends to prove a controverted fact. I like that. No, because the plaintiff has failed to establish that a duplicate cannot be found. No, because the plaintiff has failed to produce the original video recording or duplicate. Yes, because a photograph that establishes a disputed fact cannot be excluded as prejudicial. That's not true. It's going to be A. The defendant has denied that the plaintiff's injuries are severe. Therefore, the plaintiff is entitled to show the severity of his injuries by introducing the photograph and relates directly to the appropriate amount of damages. A photograph can be authenticated as long as someone says it's reliable who has knowledge. So should the statement be admitted? Oh, this one a lot of people did not like. I'll give you that. A lot of people didn't like. I almost changed it after the fact to make it more clear, but then I did my research and I kept it the same. So if you got this one wrong, just give yourself grace and keep it moving. A plaintiff sued an automobile manufacturer for injuries he suffered to his head and neck when the airbag in his car failed to deploy during an accident. When the plaintiff's symptoms continued to be severe, more than a month after the accident, his treating physician referred him to a neurologist for an evaluation. Though the neurologist did not treat the plaintiff, that doesn't matter. He diagnosed a severe concussion. At trial, the plaintiff has called the neurologist to testify that in response to the neurologist's inquiry about how the plaintiff had been injured, the plaintiff had said, "I was driving my car when another car hit me from the side and the airbag did not deploy, causing my head to hit the steering wheel. The key to this was that he wasn't assigning blame. It wasn't like Tommy ran through the red light and hit me. He was just saying a car hit me from the side and the airbag didn't deploy and my head hit the steering wheel. It really was a statement for the purpose of medical diagnosis. If you picked B, again, give yourself grace, because if he would have said, you know, Tommy's car hit me or Tommy ran through the red light or assigned some sort of blame, that would have been the right answer. But here it was actually made for the purpose of medical diagnosis or treatment, and it didn't attach particular blame. The rule allows not only statements made to treating physicians, but also made to other doctors. And we said that B is incorrect. The information the plaintiff related to the doctor, although it does relate to the cause of the injury, was pertinent to diagnosis or treatment and is therefore admissible. It does not assign any particular blame or describe anything outside the scope of medical diagnosis. So it's related to the cause of the injury, but not in a way that would be inadmissible because it you know, says whose car hit them or anything. It's just saying like, you know, a coconut hit me, right? Tough question. If you got that one wrong, again, give yourself grace and give the question writers grace too. Okay, so who will prevail? A rectangular parcel of land that has not been developed, contained 2 acres, and had 200 feet of frontage on public street. The zoning ordinance correspondent to the area mandated that a buildable lot had to contain at least 1 acre and have a frontage of not less than 150 feet on a public street. A couple owned the land as tenants in common, the husband owning 75% of the land and the wife owning the remainder. So you had to have 150 feet, but it's only 200 feet. So if you split it, you're not going to be able to do 150, 150. A couple owned it, the husband owned 75 and the wife owned the remainder. None of them owned by any other real property. The husband brought appropriate action to partition the land and proposed 1.5 with 150 of the frontage be set off to him and 0.5 with 50 be set off to her. The wife in turn submitted a defense that the land had to be sold and its proceeds be divided. The wife's going to win, but you can't divide it to conform with the zoning restrictions. So the wife, because the zoning ordinance makes it impossible to divide the land fairly, is going to be the correct solution here. A tenant in common may bring an action to partition the property, partition in kind, in which there's a physical division of the common property is preferred. However, a partition by sale is allowed when a fair and equitable physical division of the property is impossible. The applicable zoning ordinance requires a frontage of 150 feet on a public street in order to build. It would not be fair or equitable to convey only 50 feet of frontage to the wife, who then cannot build on the lot. Okay, what's the most serious crime for which the man can be found guilty? A man desperate for money decided to rob a bank. You know, there's better ways out there. You could start, I don't know, desperate for money. What do you do as a man? As a woman, there's a lot of options. As a man, I don't know, robbing a bank might be your best bet. He entered the bank and fired the bank teller, but the bank ricocheted off the bulletproof glass and struck a bystander, killing her instantly. Okay, so this is a felony murder. He went in there, tried to shoot at the bank teller, and he killed someone. In this jurisdiction, this is 27. Oh yeah. In this jurisdiction, murder in the first degree is defined as intentionally killing another human being with deliberation. Deliberation is even one moment of planning or cool reflection. Second degree murder includes all of the crimes of murder except for felony murder. The crime of common law felony murder is codified by statute as murder in the 3rd degree. Well, that's what we have here. The jurisdiction follows the common law definitions for manslaughter. What's the most serious crime the man can be found guilty? I'm saying with the 3rd degree here, right? Yeah, felony murder. The man's action constituted felony murder as the killing occurred during the commission of an inherently dangerous felony. It codifies common law felony murder as murder in the 3rd degree. Therefore, the man can be found guilty of murder in the 3rd degree. What do we got going on here? A construction company was demolishing an old building to make way for a new commercial complex in a busy downtown area. The old building was 5 stories tall and required careful, controlled demolition due to its proximity to other structures and the busy pedestrian traffic. One afternoon, as a 12-year-old girl walked past the construction site, a sector of the building unexpectedly collapsed, striking her and causing fatal injuries. When her father, who was working a few blocks away, received a phone call informing him of the tragedy, he immediately went into shock. The father was unable to work for several weeks due to severe emotional distress, frequent panic attacks, and insomnia. He sued the construction company for negligent infliction of emotional distress resulting from his daughter's death. The father presented evidence at trial conclusively proving the construction company's negligence in failing to secure the demolition site. The applicable jurisdiction has adopted the modern rule for bystander recovery in cases of NIED requiring presence at the scene but not the zone of danger. So he wasn't even there. Which party is likely to prevail? The father because he was closely related, the father because he suffered emotional distress, the construction company because the father wasn't present, or the construction company because his actions were not extreme and outrageous. I think it's going to be the construction company because the father was not present, right? The father was a few blocks away. In order for a person who is now within the zone of danger to recover, they must be closely related, be present, and personally observe it. In this case, the father was not present at the scene, and even though he's closely related, he was not present, did not observe it. Should the court grant the injunction? This one was tough, but you know, it's true. A federal statute requires all companies, not all states, employing more than 200 people to ensure that at least 20% of its workforce participates in a federally approved health and wellness program. When enacting the law, Congress stated that the law was necessary to ensure a healthy national workforce. A state has sued the federal official responsible for enforcing the statute in federal district court, seeking an injunction prohibiting enforcement of the statute on the ground that's unconstitutional. Should the court grant the injunction? Yes, because the state violates the reserve rights of the states from the 10th Amendment. No, because the federal government has sovereign immunity and cannot be sued explicitly without consent. Yes, because it's applied to state and local governments, the statute exceeds Congress's power under the Commerce Clause. No, because the statute is valid under the Commerce Clause and does not violate the 10th Amendment. This is going to be valid under the Commerce Clause. It doesn't violate the 10th Amendment either. Why? The 10th Amendment is the anti-commandeering clause. Anti-commandeering means that the federal government cannot commandeer the states to enact legislation. They're not doing that here. They're just requiring all companies that have more than 200 people. And they say that the law is necessary to ensure a healthy national workforce. Well, that's rationally related to commerce, because if everyone is unhealthy, then how are we going to be economical? So D, the statute satisfies the Commerce Clause because it relates to commercial activity, employment practices that when aggregated have a substantial effect on interstate commerce. It does not violate the 10th Amendment as applied to the state because it does not command the state to regulate the conduct of others pursuant to congressional direction. Instead, it directly regulates the state on the same terms as another entities engaged in the same conduct, which is permissible under the 10th Amendment. This is a really tough one. I think a lot of people probably picked state sovereignty, but it wasn't commandeering the state. It was just regulating economic activities. A man planned to poison his business partner. I hope James isn't planning on doing that with me, right? By slipping a lethal dose of cyanide into his partner's coffee. See, wouldn't work. I don't drink coffee. One morning, he made the coffee and added the cyanide. Nice. Before his partner arrived, the man left the room to take a phone call. During his absence, the partner accidentally knocked the cup over, spilling the coffee onto a faulty electrical outlet. The coffee caused a short circuit, resulting in a fire that killed the partner. For which crime could the man be found guilty? So the man, he planned to poison the dude and he set him up with a drink. He's not going down for murder. He's not going down for voluntary manslaughter. He's going down for involuntary manslaughter or none of the above. But did he actually do anything that should have resulted in death? Not really. He just had a cup of coffee that he spilled over. I think he's going down for nothing. Yeah, good work, Safwan. He didn't do anything. I mean, he did a lot of stuff here. At the end of the day, putting a cup of coffee on the floor that someone kicks over and short circuits an electrical outlet and causes a fire is not, you're not going down. If that were the case, then, you know, some people would go down and they would need good lawyers to get him out of it. But I don't think you're going down for that. The man's intent to kill did not directly cause the partner's death. There was no causation. The fire resulting from the spilled coffee and faulty outlet was an unintended consequence, separating the man's intent from the act causing death. Therefore, none of the charges would apply. So, in the court rules in favor of the child, what can she recover? Remember, we're always going to assume pure comparative negligence. So the answer is probably everything. A private school organized a bake sale fundraiser with several parents volunteering to bake and sell pastries. 3 parents were responsible for making cream-filled pastries. The first parent prepared the cream. The second parent baked the pastries, and the third parent filled the pastries with cream and sold them at the event. Shortly after the bake sale, numerous children who consumed the pastries fell ill with food poisoning. One child in particular was hospitalized for 5 days due to severe symptoms. The child's parents subsequently filed a negligent suit against the third parent to recover medical expenses. During the trial, it was established that the cream-filled pastries caused the food poisoning and that all three parents were negligent. However, the court could not determine the specific contribution of each parent to the contamination. If the court rules in favor of the child, what can she recover from the third parent? The answer is going to be everything, because it says here it was established that all three parents were negligent. So if it said, we didn't know who was negligent, then maybe the answer would be nothing because we didn't know who was negligent. But it says they were all negligent in this cream filling incident. Since they were all negligent in this cream filling incident, the child can recover all of their medical expenses from any of them under the theory of pure comparative fault, and joint and several liability, which you should assume. Pure comparative fault and joint and several liability. Each of two or more tortfeasors who are found liable for single and indivisible harm to the plaintiff is subject to liability to the plaintiff for the entire harm. The plaintiff has a choice of collecting the entire judgment from one defendant, the entire judgment from another defendant, or portions of the judgment from various defendants, as long as the plaintiff's entire recovery does not exceed the amount of the judgment. Here, the combined negligence of the three parents caused the child's indivisible injury, making each parent jointly and severally liable for the entire amount of the medical expenses. The mother, on behalf of her child, had the right to choose which parent to sue and from whom to recover. In turn, the third parent may sue the other two parents for contribution. Oh, nice. Easy question, nice and short. So, is a state law constitutional? I don't know. Let's see. A bakery that has its headquarters and sole production facility in the particular state has developed a healthy snack line that features various nutritious baked goods. These products are high in quality, safe, and have sold very well. Other bakeries, all located outside the state, have developed similar products that are lower in price. These bakeries have contracts to sell their healthy snack products to retailers in the state. Although these products are safe and nutritious, they do not meet the same health standards as the products made in the state. So all of them outside the state have, ones that don't meet the health standards. Nevertheless, because the price difference, sales of these out-of-state products has significantly impacted the sales of the in-state bakery's healthy snack line. The state legislators recently enacted a law to protect the citizens of the state from misleading health claims and protect in-state businesses from unfair competition. The law forbids the sale of the state of any baked good that claims to be healthy but do not meet specified health criteria. The healthy snack products made in the state, so this is how you're knowing this is going to be dormant commerce clause, satisfy all the criteria. None of the healthy snack products from competing bakeries meet the requirements. So all the ones out of the state don't meet it. The ones in the state meet it. It seems like we're discriminating against interstate commerce. I think that it's going to be that. Yes, because the state's interest in protecting the state's citizens from misleading health claims justifies the burden on interstate commerce. No. Yes, because it deals with a local matter. No, because it abrogates the obligations of contract. No, it's going to be imposing an undue burden on interstate commerce. The Commerce Clause gives Congress the power to regulate commerce among the states and by negative implication restricts the regulatory power of the states with respect to interstate commerce. Any state law that has a substantial effect on interstate commerce must not be protectionist or otherwise impose an undue burden on interstate commerce. A protectionist law benefits in-state interests at the expense of out-of-state interests. A state law that discriminates against interstate commerce is protectionist unless it serves a legitimate local interest that can not be served by non-discriminatory legislation. By barring the sale in the state of healthy snack products made in other states, the state has a substantial effect on interstate commerce. Although the law does not explicitly discriminate against out-of-state bakeries, it has a purely discriminatory effect against them, and the state has less discriminatory alternatives available to protect the legitimate interest cited in the law. The state therefore violates the negative implication of the Commerce Clause. We're supposed to memorize the amendment. Should we memorize the other sections like Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3? No, you really don't need to. You really don't need to, Safwan. I mean, maybe there'll be like one or two questions that'll be like Article 3, you know what I mean? Maybe, but honestly, I've passed 4 different MBE exams, the legend of me, and I've never remembered having to do that. I remember there being some bullshit ass questions, but I don't remember having to do like Article 3, Article 8. I don't remember ever having to be like Tommy versus Johnny or Steven versus Susie, like none of that. I do remember them putting some words that I've never seen in the English language before in front of me and being like, someone had their thesaurus out during this question making process, but I've never seen them do that. So good question. Okay. How should the attorney advise the manufacturer to respond? Well, let's see what's going on here. A software engineer domiciled in state X was injured when a chair he was using in his home office in statewide collapsed. This is a question that honestly will count as an experimental question if you got it wrong. The other one I'd say I'd count as an experimental question was I can't remember, Stefan. Do you remember? There's one earlier that I thought was, kind of on the fence that maybe I would have allowed as an experimental. This one I allowed too because I added a sentence that might make it a little more clear. A software engineer domiciled in state X was injured when a chair he was using in his home office in statewide collapsed. The chair was manufactured by a company domiciled in state Z. The engineer filed a negligence action against the manufacturer in federal district court in state Y, seeking $150,000 in damages. The manufacturer believes the engineer assembled the chair incorrectly, which contributed to the accident. This is the sentence that I added that kind of makes it more clear what the answer should be. So give yourself grace and count this as experimental if you picked, I think, C and not D. As a result of the accident and subsequent litigation, the manufacturers incurred losses related to sales, reputation, and goodwill, and the manufacturer also believes the engineer has intentionally spoken badly about the chairs to others. I wanted to show that there was some sort of damages that the software engineer incurred, or that the manufacturer incurred. The manufacturer seeks an attorney's advice about how to best respond to the action. So move to dismiss for lack of PJ, no. Move to dismiss for lack of SMJ, no. File an answer raising the affirmative defense of contributory negligence and asserting a counterclaim for negligence and or trade libel, seeking damages for the manufacturer's losses. That's going to be the best answer. File an answer raising the affirmative defense of contributory negligence and move for judgment on the pleadings. Now, even before I added the extra language that made it more clear that C was the right answer, C was still the best answer. You still wouldn't move for a judgment on the pleadings here because there's a dispute, right? But I can understand why people could have got confused. So give yourself grace. We're going to go with C. Contributory negligence is an affirmative offense that must be pleaded. In addition, the manufacturer hopes to recover against the engineer. He must assert a claim against him. Because the manufacturer's claim arises out of the same transaction occurrence as the engineer's claim, the manufacturer must assert it as a compulsory counterclaim or will be forfeited. D, while contributory negligence is an affirmative offense that must be pleaded, there's no basis for the court to grant judgment on the pleadings. The manufacturer has the burden of proof on a contributory negligence defense. Although the manufacturer made affirmative allegations in her answer and the engineer assembled the chair incorrectly, those allegations are automatically denied by operation. To prevail in the defense, the manufacturer must introduce evidence to support the defense and prevail at summary judgment or at trial. So you can't have an affirmative defense and then, judgment on the pleadings. You would have to, fight it out. Trying to think about the one that I said might have been experimental earlier. I think it might have been the one that me and Ramel were talking about, but I can't remember. Okay, so how should the court rule on the motions? All right, let's see what we got here. A tech startup signed a 5-year lease with the city for office space in a city-owned building. 3 years into the lease, the startup announced plans to move to another state for better business opportunities. The city sued the startup in federal court, seeking a permanent injunction to prevent the startup from breaking its lease and relocating. In its answer, the startup included a counterclaim seeking $5 million in damages for losses caused by the city's alleged failure to maintain the building's HVAC system as required by the lease. The startup demanded jury trial on the counterclaim. The city moved to try its counterclaim for a permanent injunction before the trial on the startup's counterclaim. The startup objected and moved that the jury trial of its counterclaim be held before the trial of the city's injunction claim. How should the court rule on the parties' motions? So $5 million is legal, counterclaim is equitable. The rule is this a federal case? Yeah, federal court. The rule is federal court, 7th Amendment, right to trial by jury for legal cases. And the rule is also when you have a jury trial and a bench trial, you'll do the jury trial first, no matter if it's claim or counterclaim. So they'll first hold the jury trial and then the non-jury trial of the remaining claims. That's definitely the answer. You're going to do the jury trial first. Even though it's the counterclaim, you're always going to do the jury trial first. I hope you all get that right. In this case, the Supreme Court held that when both legal and equitable issues are presented in a case, a court must submit the legal issues to the jury first, and then the court can resolve any remaining equitable issues. If any issues overlap, the court is bound by the jury's resolution of the overlapping issues. So remember that for federal cases, not state cases, but federal cases at law, so for monetary relief over $20, you do get a trial by jury. That's a right. Sometimes you'll also get a trial by jury if it was actionable at common law, like a writ of ejectment, or if it tells you in the fact pattern it was actionable at common law, or if it says that, that act was available in 1776 or something like that. Okay. Should the court grant the employer's motion to intervene? So construction worker domiciled in state X was injured when a heavy metal beam fell on him while he was working at a construction site in state Y. The construction site is owned and operated by a state Z corporation. As a result of the accident, the worker suffered serious injuries and the specialized equipment he was using was damaged beyond repair. The worker sued the construction site owner for negligence in federal district court in state Y, seeking $150,000 in personal injury damages. The worker's employer, a construction company based in state X, has filed a timely motion to intervene, asserting a $50,000 negligent claim against a construction site owner for damage to the equipment. Should the court grant the employer's motion to intervene? No, although the employer has an interest in the worker's action, that interest is not likely to be impaired by the employer's absence. No, because the worker chose not to join the employer as a co-plaintiff in his action. Yes, because the employer is an indispensable party. That's not even true. Yes, because the employer's claim shares common questions of law and fact with the worker's action. That's going to be the standard for motion to intervene. We like that. Under Rule 24B of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, a non-party may intervene in an action if the claim shares a common question of law or fact with the main action. In this case, both the worker and employer's claims arise out of the same incident. The action on the construction site, therefore, will allow permissive intervention. If the librarians challenge the constitutionality of the budget provision, is the court likely to uphold the provision? Let's see. A city public library adopted a new policy prohibiting certain kinds of speech within the library premises. Library patrons and employees found guilty by library tribunals of violating the policy were subject to penalties that include fines, suspensions, expulsions, and termination of employment. The policy was widely unpopular, and there's a great deal of public anger directed toward the two long-serving librarians who drafted and promoted it. The following year, the city council approved a severable provision in the budget for the library declaring that none of the library's funding can be used to pay the two librarians who were specifically named in the provision. They were going to be punished right here. They're being punished early. In the past, the librarian's salary had always been paid from the funds appropriated to the library by the city council, and the library had no other funds that could be used to pay them. So, if the librarians challenge the constitutionality of the budget provision, is the court likely to uphold the provision? Yes, because the 11th Amendment gives the city council plenary power to appropriate city funds in the manner that deems most conducive to the welfare of its people. No, because it's based on conduct the librarians engaged in before it's enacted. Yes, because the full faith and credit clause requires the court to enforce the provision strictly according to its terms. No, because it amounts to the imposition by the legislator of a punishment without a trial, right? That's going to be called a bill of attainder right here. This is a bill of attainder because their salaries had been paid for by the city council, and now before they even had a trial or anything, they're saying that they're going to be not able to be paid by it. Yes, the library tribunal. Okay, so the provision is a bill of attainder. A bill of attainder is a law that provides for the punishment of a particular person without a trial. The challenge provision satisfies the definition because it deprives the two named librarians of their salaries and thus their employment. Another tough question. Okay, on which grounds did the U.S. Supreme Court deny the petition?
Wait, real quick for that last one, it was not ex post facto because does that only apply to criminal cases, ex post facto?
That
Whereas
is
this
true.
was like a salary?
This
This
is
is taken
true.
up.
Ex post facto applies to criminal cases, and it's also true because it wasn't punishing them for behavior that they did that was, not criminalized and was later criminalized. It was that they were punishing them without giving them an opportunity to be heard. But yeah, also important to note, good point, that ex post facto is for crimes. All right, let's try this one. So a city ordinance states that in every criminal trial, the accused shall have the right to confront all witnesses against him face to face. A defendant was convicted in city court of theft based on testimony from a 7-year-old child. The child testified while she was seated behind one-way glass, which allowed the defendant to see the child, but did not allow the child to see the defendant. The defendant appealed to the city's highest court, claiming that the inability of the child to see the defendant while she testified violated both the United States Constitution and the city ordinance. Without addressing the federal constitutional issue, the city's highest court reversed the defendant's conviction and ordered a new trial. The court held that the ordinance of the city is clear and requires that while testifying in a criminal trial, a witness must be able to see the defendant. The city petitioned the United States Supreme Court for writ of certiorari. On which ground should the United States Supreme Court deny the petition? The decision of the highest court was based on adequate independent city ground. The decision of the city's highest court requires a new trial and therefore is not a final judgment. A city may not seek appellate review in the United States Supreme Court of the reversal of a criminal conviction by its highest court. The Sixth Amendment to the United States Constitution does not require that a witness against a criminal defendant be able to see the defendant while the witness testifies. I think, Brittany, if she's still here, this is your favorite answer, right?
Yep,
Nice, and you are still here. How's your board doing?
it's up there.
It's boarding.
It's boarding.
It's boarding. The Supreme Court may not review a judgment by the highest court of a state if that judgment is supported entirely by state law and is wholly independent of the interpretation of the application of federal law. In this case, although the defendant claimed a violation of the Sixth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, the city's highest court based its decision entirely on the city ordinance without addressing the federal constitutional issue. All right. A state legislator received complaints from recent graduates who, in the days immediately following their graduation, had received unwelcome and occasionally misleading telephone calls from student loan consolidation companies. The callers warned of the risk of not consolidating their loans immediately and offered free consultations to help the graduates determine whether they could save money by consolidating their loans. In response to these complaints, the legislator enacted a law prohibiting student loan consolidation companies from soliciting any recent graduate by telephone within 30 days of graduation. This sounds a lot like accidents, 30 days. Which of the following arguments would be most helpful to the state in defending the constitutionality of the law? It's a reasonable time, place, and manner. Because the law regulates only commercial speech, the state need only demonstrate that the restriction is rationally related to achieving the state's legitimate interest in protecting the privacy of recent graduates and regulating the student loan industry. Because the commercial speech that is subject of the law includes some speech as misleading, the First Amendment does not limit the state's power to regulate that speech. The state has substantial interest in protecting the privacy of recent graduates and regulating the practice of student loan consolidation companies, and the law is narrowly tailored to achieve the state's objectives. I like D, right? Because substantial interest in protecting their privacy and it's narrowly tailored to achieve the objectives. Anyone else like any of these answer choices besides D? I think D's gotta be the best answer here. Yeah, that's most similar to what would it be like if it was, the accent law. The law regulates only commercial speech in the First Amendment, right? So it's gonna be substantial interest, so commercial speech. Invalidates any law regulating such a speech unless it's narrowly tailored to serve a substantial government interest. So that's regulation of commercial speech, intermediate scrutiny, and a law barring the solicitation of accident victims within a time period following an accident was narrowly tailored to serve the state's substantial interest, protecting the privacy of the victim. So it's the same concept here, accident victims or student loan consolidation companies. Okay. What standard should the court apply in reviewing the constitutionality of this law? This one might have got people too. This one was, I think, tough. In con law, by definition, I say everyone is arguable. How do you know what the legislator or what the, not legislator, how do you know what the judicial, the judges would decide in any particular case? You really don't. You only have precedent. If that were the case, then a lot of Supreme Court, decisions over the past few years would never have been able to have seen the light of day, right? The constitutional law, by definition, is a little bit subjective. So a state law provides that anyone who owns 2 or more dogs must file with the registry. The purpose of the law is to document all the names of the dogs for an almanac that the state creates every 10 years that highlights common trends in society. A dog owner who has 3 dogs wishes to keep the information about his dog private and challenges the law. What standard should the court apply in reviewing the constitutionality of this law? So it's a state law, equal protection, who's going to be the targeted class, the dog owners. It's gonna have to be rational basis. They must show that didn't have a rational basis for enacting the law. Now, again, if you got this one wrong and your argument was, oh, it's invasion of privacy, then that's why it's strict scrutiny. Maybe there's an argument there, but again, I don't think it was talking about procedural due process. It wasn't saying that you're being deprived of a notice and hearing. It was saying who's being targeted here, and who's being targeted was it wasn't substantive due process because it's not targeting everyone. It's targeting specifically dog owners, and I think they would have to file rational basis. The appropriate standard, because dog owners are not a suspect class and there's no public health concern behind the law that would trigger any heightened scrutiny. Okay, in addition to the supremacy clause of Article 6, what's the most obvious constitutional basis for the imposition of a stay of the unpaid rent claim in the state court? A tenant owed a landlord $800 in unpaid rent. A law of the state in which the landlord and tenant reside provides that the courts of that state must decide claims for unpaid rent within 20 days of filing. After the landlord filed a claim in state court pursuant to this law, the tenant filed a voluntary bankruptcy petition in federal bankruptcy court. In the bankruptcy proceeding, bankruptcy, the tenant sought to stay further proceedings in the unpaid rent claim on the basis of a federal statute that provides that a person who files a federal bankruptcy petition receives an automatic stay of all proceedings against him in all federal and state courts. No other federal laws apply. In addition to the supremacy clause, it's got to be the bankruptcy clause, right? Congress does have the power to provide uniform rules of bankruptcy. A lot of people probably went straight to commerce clause thinking that was the best answer, but bankruptcy is even better because that is an explicit power of Congress. Congress's power to provide uniform rules of bankruptcy offers the most obvious constitutional basis for federal statute requiring a stay of court proceedings against a person who has filed a federal bankruptcy petition. A federal statute providing, yeah, that's going to be correct. All right. So is the president's decision constitutional? Congress enacted a statute that authorized the construction of new research facility to study renewable energy resources. Another statute appropriated $5 million for the construction. When the United States entered into a significant international agreement to reduce carbon emissions, the president announced that he was canceling the facility's construction and that he would not spend the appropriated funds. Although the actual reason for the president's decision was a new international agreement, the announcement stated that the reason was a shift in budgetary priorities. Assume that no other statutes apply. Is the president's decision constitutional? Yes, because the president's decision is a valid exercise of his executive powers. No, because the president is vested with inherent executive power to control federal expenditures. No, because the president is obligated to spend funds in accordance with congressional directions. Sure. And no, because the president failed to invoke his executive powers in his announcement. C is the correct answer. Hey, Ramel, you're here? I'm noticing that your accountability partners are both not here. That's why there's been no jokes made today because Rob's not here. And that's why there's been no questions because Erica's not here. Why are they not here? Whatever. All right. Should the court allow defense counsel to ask the plaintiff about the 2 prior incidents? Probably not. Probably gonna be specific acts, right? 2 prior incidents. Let's see. In a civil trial arising from a workplace injury, the plaintiff testified on direct that he had been following all safety protocols at the time of the accident. On cross, the defendant's lawyer asked whether the plaintiff claimed to have been exercising due care at the time, and the plaintiff replied that he had been working carefully. At a sidebar conference, the defendant's lawyer sought permission to ask the plaintiff about 2 prior incidents in the previous 12 months in which he'd been cited by the company for failing to follow safety protocols. The plaintiff's lawyers objected. Should the court allow defense counsel to ask the plaintiffs about the 2 prior incidents? So he failed to follow safety protocols. Yes, because failing to follow safety protocols on the recent occasions tends to contradict the plaintiff's claim that he was working carefully at the time of the accident. Absolutely not. No, because there's no indication that failing the following failing to follow safety protocols on other occasions led to formal disciplinary action. That's not important. Yes, because failing to follow safety protocols on the other occasions bears on the plaintiff's credibility since he claims to have followed them in this case. I really hope it's D. No, because failing to follow safety protocols on the other occasions does not bear on the plaintiff's veracity and does not contradict his testimony in this case, right? Because he said that he'd been working carefully, and he said 2 prior incidents in the past. I think it's got to be D, right? Prior incidents, we're not going to allow them. It's going to be D or B, but B makes no sense, so it has to be D. Under this rule, a witness can be impeached with prior bad acts that bear upon truthfulness. Failing to follow safety protocols has no bearing on truthfulness. As a general matter, a witness can be impeached with evidence that contradicts a part of his testimony that bears on an important issue in dispute. However, in this case, the prior bad acts do not contradict the witness's testimony that he'd been following safety protocols on this occasion. Essentially, the defendant is trying to show that a plaintiff is a careless worker, carelessness is a character trait, and evidence of a person's character is not admissible in a civil case to prove how that person acted on occasion in question. How should the court proceed? A defendant was on trial for drug possession. The prosecutor called a police officer to testify that shortly after being detained in question, the defendant had orally admitted to possessing the drugs. Before the officer testified, the defendant objected that no Miranda warnings had been given to her, and she requested a hearing outside the presence of the jury to hear the issue. We're going to have the hearing outside the presence of the jury. We can't have the jury tainted by it. The court should grant the request because the hearing of admissibility must be conducted outside the presence of the jury. The court may grant or deny the request because the court has discretion whether to conduct preliminary hearings in the presence of the jury. The court should deny the request and rule the confession inadmissible because only written confessions are permitted in criminal cases. No. The court should deny the request and rule the confession admissible because the statement of a party opponent. It's not about that. It's about the admissibility of it, which we're going to have to do outside the presence of a jury. So a confession made by a person under detention and subjected to questioning could be admitted into evidence at trial only if Miranda warnings are given. Before the defendant contends that no Miranda warnings are given, she's entitled to a hearing on the issue. The hearing must be conducted so that jury cannot hear it. If a man sues his coworker for personal injury damages, which of the following actions must the trial court take if requested by the man? A man suffered a broken leg during an altercation with his coworker at a company picnic. The altercation occurred after a heated argument about a work-related issue. Prevent the coworker's principal eyewitness from testifying upon a showing that 6 years ago the witness was convicted of perjury and the conviction has not been the subject of pardon or annulment. Refuse to let the coworker cross-examine the man's medical expert on matters not covered on direct. Require the production of a writing used before trial to refresh the witness's memory. Exclude a non-party eyewitness from the courtroom during the testimony of other witnesses. We do have to do that. D is true. If that's requested, always you have to exclude a non-party eyewitness from the courtroom during the testimony of other witnesses. So D is correct. Rule 615 provides that if a party moves to exclude prospective witnesses before they testify, the court must order witnesses excluded so they cannot hear other witnesses' testimony. Let's see what we got. Number 45. What's the call to question? Self-defense. Who's going to prevail? So a renowned chef hired a security guard to protect him during a high-profile culinary festival. This kind of sounds funny to me. The security guard's contract allowed him to use reasonable force to ensure the chef's safety. All these chefs are walking around like they're celebrities. Additionally, the chef instructed the security guard to avoid physical contact with fans unless they pose an immediate threat within 1 foot radius. So the chef told this guy, like, I need you to pull out the kung fu if necessary. During the festival, a fan aggressively attempted to reach the chef to get an autograph. Despite repeated verbal requests from the security guard, the fan continued to push forward. When the fan was still 2 feet away but made a sudden move towards the chef, the security guard used a stun gun on the fan, causing him to fall and injure himself. The fan sued the chef for battery, seeking compensation. Assuming the security guard's actions were not a reasonable exercise of self-defense, who will prevail? The chef, because he's not liable for the intentional toward the security guard's employee. So responding superior, you're usually not liable for intentional torts of others, so A is the answer. The chef, because he gave the security guard specific instructions that he did not follow. The fan, because the chef is always responsible for any tortious conduct by the security guard as force is inherent in the job. Oh yeah, that's the answer. You're always responsible. Or no. D, the fan, because the security guard's conduct was in the scope of his employment. I was just joking with you guys. It's not going to be A or C. It's going to be D here. The reason is you're not liable for intentional torts unless it's within the scope. Security guard, bouncer, I mean, they beat people up for a living. Now, C is not true either, because you're not going to be any tortious conduct, but it's going to be any conduct that's within the scope of their employment. So D is the correct answer. An employer is generally liable for the tortious conduct of employment of an employee that occurs within the scope of employment. Although employers are typically not liable for intentional torts committed by employees, there's an exception when force is inherent in the employee's work and the tort occurs during the course of employment. In this case, the security guard's role inherently involved using force to protect the chef. Despite the security guard acting contrary to the chef's instructions by using a stun gun before the fan was within the 1 foot radius, the security guard was still acting within the scope of his employment to protect the chef from the perceived threat. Therefore, the chef is liable for the fan's injuries resulting from the security guard's actions. What's the maximum amount the experienced biker can recover from the beginner? Let's find out. A highly experienced mountain biker and a beginner mountain biker were both riding on a popular mountain trail. The experienced biker was riding at high speed, zigzagging through the trail to showcase her skills while listening to music through her earphones. The beginner biker, unfamiliar with the trail and struggling to control his bike, yelled for the experienced biker to move out the way. Right? He was singing that ludicrous song. However, the experienced biker could neither see nor hear the beginner due to her speed and earphones. Consequently, the beginner biker collided with the experienced biker, resulting in both bikers falling off their bikes and sustaining injuries. The experienced biker brought an action in jurisdiction that applies a pure comparative negligence. So they told us, that's what we assumed, but they told us anyway. Our trial was established that the beginning bikers were common on the trail, and riding at high speed was not prohibited. The jury determined that experienced bikers amounted to 120, experienced biker was 75% at fault, and the beginner was 25% at fault. So if the beginner is 25% at fault, then that's interesting. But we're actually interested in the experienced biker. The experienced biker was 75% at fault. That means the experienced biker can recover 25% of the 120, right? Because it's pure comparative negligence. They could have been 99% at fault and still recovered 1%. They can recover 25% of 120. What's it looking like? It's got to be this one. Without doing any math, that's the one that looks like 20% of 130, right? Because that's the truth. In pure comparative negligence jurisdiction, plaintiff's contributory negligence is not a complete bar recovery, right? So remember the first question at common law, contributory jurisdictions, it is a bar to recovery. In pure comparative jurisdictions, it's not a bar to recovery. In modified, up to 50% is not a bar to recovery. Instead, the plaintiff's full damages are calculated by the trier of fact and then reduced by the proportion of plaintiff's fault bears to total harm. Here, the plaintiff's total damages are 120, as she's 75% at fault. Thus, her damages are reduced by that amount, and she can only recover 30. Answer choice A is incorrect because it applies the rule in a contributory negligence jurisdiction where the plaintiff's own negligence is a complete bar to recovery. Answer B is incorrect because it implies the modified comparative fault theory of recovery where the plaintiff is more at fault than the defendant, then the plaintiff's recovery is barred. Answer D is incorrect because it does not reduce the plaintiff's damages by her own proportion of fault as required in pure comparative negligence jurisdiction. So it's got to be 30 right here. All right, nice short question. The multinational corporation has appealed the denial of the motion. Should the appellate court hear the merits of the multinational corporation's appeal? Let us find out. A tech startup based in state C sued a large multinational corporation headquartered in state D and a federal court in state C, alleging patent infringement. The startup claimed that the multinational corporation's new product line unlawfully sued their patented technology. The multinational corporation moved to dismiss the case for lack of PJ, arguing that did not have sufficient contacts with the state to be sued there. The federal court in state C denied the motion, finding that the multinational corporation had sufficient business activities in state C to establish personal jurisdiction. The court then set dates for discovery and trial. The multinational corporation has appealed the denial of the motion. Should the appellate court hear the merits of the multinational corporation's appeal? Well, what do we think? What are they appealing? The denial of the motion. What's the motion for? PJ? No, that's not interlocutory. So no, they lack shoot, let me think about this. No, because the appellate court lacks jurisdiction to appeal. No, because the court's decision. No, because the district court's decision on jurisdiction is final. Yes, because a contrary appellate jurisdiction can terminate the action. Yes, because it raises a constitutional question. They lack jurisdiction over the appeal. Why? Because they only have there hasn't been a final judgment, right? That's gonna be the answer. When can we have interlocutory appeal over injunction, right? If there's a preliminary injunction denied or issued, we can appeal that. If there's a certification of a class action, we can appeal that immediately, interlocutory. If there is something called the collateral order doctrine, something that's so important and pressing that we need to know it now, like Saffron was explaining, in the game of Monopoly, whether going past go, you collect $200. We need to figure out that rule before the end of the game, or the whole game is going to get played wrong. So it's something that's so important. That's collateral order doctrine, or something known as an extraordinary writ, like something that's a writ that's so, mandamus or something that's so extraordinary that needs to be immediately appealed. But here we're going to lack jurisdiction because it's not immediately appealable. For lack of personal jurisdiction is not immediately appealable. We have to wait until there's a final judgment. Under the federal court system, the Court of Appeals has jurisdiction only over final judgments. So motion to dismiss can lead to a final judgment if granted, but in this case it was denied and the action continues in the trial court. Therefore, the appellate court lacks jurisdiction to hear the appeal, right? The denial of PJ will not be immediately appealable. Can the man be properly found guilty of violating the state statute? I thought this was the easiest question on the test, but some people got it wrong, so what do I know? A man borrows his neighbor's motorcycle to run an errand. Before setting off, the man checked the motorcycle storage compartment and found a folder that he reasonably believed contained the registration papers and insurance card. In reality, the folder contained maintenance records. While riding on a state highway, a police officer stopped the man for a routine check and discovered that the motorcycle's registration had expired. The man was charged under a state statute that reads, any person operating an unregistered motor vehicle on a state highway shall be liable for a fine not exceeding $1,500. Can the man be properly be found guilty of violating the state statute? No, because the man reasonably believed that the registration papers were in the storage compartment. No, because the man was not the owner of the motorcycle. Yes, because the man operated an unregistered vehicle on the state highway. Yep. Yes, because the man should have verified with the neighbor that the motorcycle was registered. Here, the person is going to be found guilty or violating the state statute because it's a statute, right? Like you were definitely guilty and there's not going to be any defense. It's like speeding, you did the thing that you were banned from doing and no defense will prevail. You'll have to be strict liability. So the statute is likely a strict liability offense where the actus rea of operating an unregistered vehicle is sufficient for a conviction, regardless of the man's reasonable belief or lack of intent. The relatively light penalty of a fine suggests the offense is strict liability. All right, nice, easy, short question. So based on these facts, from whom can the parent recover damages? I hope my attitude is I hope you guys are adopting my attitude a little bit. Like, just be positive. Every question is interesting. Every question is short. Just it's fun. Try to love your life because this is a part of your life that so many of my students are like, Andrew, I can't believe it, but I miss studying. Like, something's wrong with me. I'm a masochist. I love studying. I'm like, you and everyone else, studying is fun. Going to school is fun. Working is not that fun. All right. Let's finish up right here. So based on these facts, from whom can the parent recover damages? A child was playing on a zip line at an adventure park. The zip line's cable had not been properly inspected by the park staff and the cable snapped, causing the child to fall and injure his leg. A nearby teenager, seeing the child in pain, ran over to help. In his effort to free the child from the tangled cable, the teenager inadvertently pulled too hard on the broken cable, causing it to recoil and hit the child's arm. As a result, the child suffered a fractured leg from the initial fall and a broken arm from the recoiling table. The child's parents sued both the adventure park and the teenager for negligence on behalf of the child. At trial, it was established that the park's negligent maintenance of the zipline caused the initial fall. It was also established that the teenager's intervention was negligent, but that the zipline's failure would not have occurred if it had not been properly maintained. Based on these facts, from whom can the parent recover damages? Neither party, only the adventure park, only a teenager, or as we've learned, pure comparative, joint several, you can recover from everyone. The adventure park is liable for negligently maintaining the zip line, as it's foreseeable that a child might use the zip line and its failure could cause injury. The teenager's intervening negligence in trying to help the child does not absolve the park of its liability. A foreseeable intervening cause, not supervening, such as the negligence of a rescuer, does not cut off the original defendant's liability. Negligent intervening acts are generally foreseeable and do not prevent the original defendant from being held liable. Here, the adventure park's negligent maintenance is both the actual and proximate cause of the child's injuries. The teenager's subsequent negligence was a foreseeable intervening act, so it did not break the chain of causation started by the park's negligence. Therefore, the park remains liable for the child's injuries. Additionally, the teenager is liable for any additional injuries caused by his negligent actions, even though this situation arose due to the park's initial negligence. He would be liable for injuries that exceeded those caused by the park's negligence alone. And then finally, a nice short question to end it all. Who has the prior lien? Well, let us see. A creditor received a valid judgment against a debtor and properly filed the judgment in the county. 5 years later, the debtor purchased land of the county and promptly recorded the warranty deed to the land. Subsequently, the debtor borrowed $50,000 from his cousin, signed a promissory note for that amount, and secured the note with a mortgage on the land. The mortgage was promptly recorded. The cousin did not perform a title search before making the loan. The debtor failed to pay the creditor and defaulted on the mortgage loan from his cousin. A valid judicial foreclosure proceeding was conducted in which the creditor, the cousin, and the debtor were named parties. There was a conflict in regard to which lien had priority. A statute of jurisdiction provides any judgment properly filed shall, for 10 years from filing, be a lien on real property, then owed or subsequently acquired by any person against whom the judgment is rendered. So here, a judgment properly filed will operate as a lien. A second statute provides no unrecorded conveyance or mortgage of real property shall be good against subsequent purchasers for value without notice, who shall first record. So this is a race notice jurisdiction, and we have a jurisdiction where judgments serve as liens. So who has the prior lien? The cousin, since a judgment lien is subordinate to a mortgage lien. The cousin, because she is the mortgagee under a purchase money mortgage. The creditor, since its judgment was filed first. Or the creditor, as the cousin, had a duty to make a title search of the property. So what do we think is the answer to this one? Well, let's see. The cousin borrowed it, the cousin secured the note, the mortgage was promptly recorded. So the cousin was the one who took it and recorded it. The creditor received the judgment and filed the judgment in the county. So the creditor came first and filed. So it seems like actually the creditor should win, right? The creditor was the one who came first and the creditor promptly filed, right? And in this jurisdiction, it says that a judgment shall serve as a lien and it has to be notice and first to record. Well, recording provides notice. They filed first and they were a judgment creditor, but in this jurisdiction, we recognize a judgment creditor as actually being someone who takes a lien in the property. So with that being said, who has the prior lien? It should be the creditor because the judgment was filed first, right? Yeah. So I appreciate everyone. I know this was the longest class ever, but I think the answer here is the creditor. Amazing. And look, we got a 50%, 100% perfect score. So that was really amazing. I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing and stop this recording, but thank you all so much for joining me on this fine evening.